Hey everyone. I want to take just a few minutes to talk through a message that really sits at the heart of our 2026 church theme, Built to Last. The message is called Built on Christ Alone, and it comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 9 through 11. One thing we all know, whether we think about it or not, is that most things don't fall apart at once. They usually wear down over time. Sometimes things look fine on the outside, but underneath, something just isn't right. Then pressure comes and what's really there gets exposed. Paul uses that exact idea when he talks about our lives in the church. He calls us God's building. He starts by reminding the Corinthian church of something that they had clearly lost sight of. He says, "You're God's husbandry, you're God's building." In other words, this doesn't belong to you. It belongs to God. When we understand this, it changes everything. The church doesn't belong to personalities or preferences or leaders, and our lives aren't personal projects that we ask God to bless after the fact. We're not the owners, we're just stewards. When that settles in, it reshapes how we think, how we serve, and how we build. Once ownership is clear, responsibility can start to come into focus. Paul talks about laying the foundation by God's grace, and then he says something that should really stop us in our tracks. He says, "Let every man take heed how he buildeth." See, grace doesn't remove responsibility. Instead, it creates it. God gives us the privilege of building, but he expects us to build carefully. Here's the truth. Every one of us is building something all the time. There's no neutral ground. Our habits, our decisions, our priorities, the way we respond to pressure, all of this is shaping what we're building. The question isn't whether you're building, the question is whether you're building with care. A good start isn't enough. What lasts is determined by faithfulness over time. Carelessness, even unintentional carelessness, will eventually weaken whatever it is we're trying to build. Then Paul brings everything into sharp focus with one clear statement. He says, "Other foundation can no man lay than that is laid, which is Jesus Christ." The foundation isn't a method, it's not a tradition, it's not a personality, it's a person. And that person is Jesus. Everything rises or falls right there. Anything added alongside Christ becomes a substitute foundation, and substitute foundations always fail under pressure. You can build something that looks impressive on the surface, but if the foundation is weak, it's not going to last. A life built on Christ alone looks different when pressure comes. It doesn't mean life is easy, but it does mean that there's stability. There's steadiness instead of panic. There's endurance instead of collapse. Faith stays anchored because it's resting on something secure. After Hurricane Katrina, engineers noticed something interesting along the Gulf Coast. Entire neighborhoods were destroyed, but a few homes were still standing right in the middle of the devastation. The difference wasn't size or appearance, it was the foundation. Those homes were built for the storm long before the storm arrived. And that's really the heart of this message. A life that is built to last belongs to God, is built with care, and rests on Christ alone. If you're a believer, here's the challenge. Stop trusting in things that can't really hold you up. Take a careful look at how you're building on Christ and commit to building intentionally. And if your life has never truly been built on Christ, then today can be the beginning. You can't build a life that rests on effort, religion, or even good intentions. Jesus came to this earth and lived the life that you and I cannot live. He died for our sins and rose again so that we could be forgiven and made new. You can turn from trusting yourself and place your faith in Him alone. Thanks for taking a few minutes to listen today. My prayer is that this will encourage you to keep building on the only foundation that will never fail.